There are public appearances that fade as quickly as the headlines that announce them, and then there are appearances that linger not because they were loud or controversial, but because they quietly reassert something fundamental. This week's 15% Pledge Gala was very much the latter. When Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, stepped into that space, she didn't simply attend an event. She reinforced a narrative that has followed her for years, that presence, when intentional, can be more powerful than any press release, rebuttal, or carefully worded statement. From the moment images surfaced, the response was immediate and visceral. There was no confusion, no need for explanation. The reaction wasn't manufactured, it was instinctive. She looked radiant, yes, but more importantly, she looked assured. This wasn't the look of someone seeking approval or validation. It was the posture of someone entirely comfortable with who she is, where she stands, and why she's there. That confidence is often mistaken for provocation, especially in a culture that expects women, particularly women of colour, to soften themselves to be palatable. Meghan has never done that, and this appearance was no exception. What's striking is how often the conversation wants to stop at the aesthetic, as if the visual alone explains the moment. But to do that would miss the point entirely. The fashion mattered, but only because it was in dialogue with the purpose of the evening. The 15% Pledge Gala is not a generic charity event. It is rooted in a concrete, measurable mission, pushing major retailers to commit at least 15% of their shelf space to black-owned businesses. That goal is neither abstract nor symbolic. It's economic, it's structural. It's about access to markets that have historically excluded black entrepreneurs. This is why Meghan's presence made sense in a way that felt seamless rather than strategic. Long before she held any royal title, she spoke openly about equity, representation, and opportunity. These weren't causes she discovered after gaining a platform, they were values she articulated while still building her career, often at personal and professional cost. So when she shows up to an event like this, it doesn't read as a rebrand or a pivot. It reads as continuity. Standing alongside figures such as Emma Grede, the energy in the room reflected that alignment. There was no sense of hierarchy or performance, no undercurrent of competition. Instead, what came through was mutual respect, women who understand both the optics and the substance of what they're doing, occupying the same space with ease. In a media culture that thrives on comparison and conflict, moments like that are quietly radical. Then there was the dress. Designed by Harbison Studio, the gown became a visual extension of the evening's purpose, rather than a distraction from it. This wasn't about wearing a designer because of status or trend. It was about using visibility to elevate independent black-owned talent in an industry notorious for gatekeeping. Fashion, in this context, wasn't frivolous. It was communicative. The interaction between Meghan and the designer told its own story. It wasn't distant or transactional. It was collaborative. That matters because it challenges the way celebrity fashion is often framed as a one-way exchange where designers serve stars and stars move on. Here, the exchange felt reciprocal. The designer's work was honoured, and Meghan's platform amplified it. That's how cultural capital can be redistributed in meaningful ways. This is where the idea of real royalty becomes interesting. Strip away titles and protocol, and what remains is influence. The ability to enter a space and shift its tone. The capacity to draw attention not just to oneself, but to the work being done by others. Meghan's presence does that consistently, which is precisely why it unsettles people who prefer visibility to remain confined to traditional, tightly controlled channels. She doesn't announce herself. She doesn't need to. The reaction does that for her. Timelines light up. Headlines scramble. Commentary multiplies. And almost immediately the familiar cycle begins. Attempts to downplay, to question motives, to reframe the moment as something less than what it is. That cycle says far more about the discomfort her visibility generates than it does about her actions. What often gets lost in that noise is how ordinary, in the best sense of the word, her behaviour actually is. She shows up, she engages, she supports causes aligned with her values, she looks polished doing it. For most public figures, this would barely register as remarkable. Yet for Meghan, it becomes a referendum every single time. That double standard is impossible to ignore. The gala itself was a reminder of what purposeful gatherings can look like. Yes, there was glamour. Yes, there were cameras. But the focus remained on the mission, celebrating black excellence, fostering economic empowerment, and creating tangible opportunities for businesses that have been systematically marginalized. The conversations happening in that room had weight. Connections were being made that could lead to contracts, collaborations, and growth long after the lights dimmed. And that's where Meghan's role becomes especially significant. Her presence doesn't overshadow these spaces. It draws attention to them. It expands their reach. People who might never have engaged with the 15% pledge are now aware of it because she was there. That's not accidental, and it's not trivial. Visibility, when leveraged responsibly, is a form of advocacy. Critics often dismiss this as performative, but that argument collapses under scrutiny. Performative activism is fleeting. It's inconsistent. It prioritizes optics over outcomes. What Meghan has demonstrated instead is sustained engagement. She continues to align herself with initiatives that emphasize long-term structural change rather than short-term praise. That consistency is what makes the criticism ring hollow. The media fixation on her appearance, dissecting every detail, every expression, every perceived implication, often obscures the more interesting story. How she navigates these spaces with deliberateness and restraint. There's a careful balance in how she presents herself. Approachable, but not overexposed. Warm, but not ingratiating. Sophisticated, without being distant. That balance is difficult to maintain, especially under relentless scrutiny, and yet she manages it with remarkable steadiness. Watching footage from the evening, it's clear that she understands the power of being fully present. She's not rushing through interactions or treating the event as an obligation to be checked off a list. She's engaged, she's listening, she's participating. That level of attentiveness signals respect for the cause, for the people in the room, and for the work being done. This is also why her choice to wear an independent black-owned design house carries weight beyond fashion commentary. In an industry dominated by a handful of established names, visibility can be transformative. A single high-profile moment can open doors that years of talent and effort alone might not. By making that choice publicly, Meghan isn't just supporting one studio, she's challenging an industry norm. Of course, none of this exists in a vacuum. The backdrop to every appearance she makes is years of polarized coverage, speculation, and criticism. There are always attempts to reframe her actions through a lens of suspicion, to suggest ulterior motives where none are evident. Yet moments like this make those narratives increasingly difficult to sustain. When actions align so clearly with stated values, the gap between accusation and reality becomes obvious. What's particularly telling is how often detractors focus on hypothetical futures where she might or might not show up years from now, instead of the tangible impact of what she's doing in the present. That obsession with speculation serves as a distraction from accountability. It shifts attention away from real issues and into endless conjecture. Meanwhile, the work continues. The 15% Pledge's mission is straightforward, but its implications are profound. Increasing shelf space for Black-owned businesses translates into increased revenue, job creation, and community investment. It addresses inequality at a systemic level rather than offering symbolic gestures. Supporting that mission isn't glamorous in the way traditional charity can be, but it's far more consequential. By lending her platform to this initiative, Meghan is reinforcing a version of public service that prioritizes substance over spectacle. She's not positioning herself as the center of the story. She's using her visibility to amplify others. That distinction matters, even if it's frequently ignored. In the end, this appearance wasn't about silencing critics or winning approval. It didn't need to be. It was about coherence between values and actions, between message and medium. It was about demonstrating that elegance and impact are not mutually exclusive, that visibility can be wielded thoughtfully, and that presence, when grounded in purpose, speaks louder than any narrative imposed from the outside. She didn't just attend the gala. She reinforced its mission. She didn't just wear a dress. She elevated the artistry and the intent behind it. She didn't just exist in the space, she shaped it. And that is why moments like this endure, not because they dominate a news cycle, but because they quietly reassert what has been true all along.